What would you say to the woman, though, or the person that wants to develop this feminine sense of themselves better and go into their feelings, to be silent, be still, go within, get to know themselves better, connect with that source of power, but truly is afraid of what they're going to find there, or doesn't know what to do with the feelings because the feelings are bad, they're uncomfortable, or they know it means they're going to make them aware of a change they probably need to make in them in their lives, whether it be a relationship, a job, a situation, and that just whole thing makes them feel uncomfortable. They're not resourced to deal with what they're going to find there. What would you say to that person that's keeping them at bay because they don't feel resourced to deal with them?
Good question. So here I'm going to show my compassionate side, the feminine side of that answer. Okay. So again, this is something that's happened to you. You've been conditioned to do, you've been conditioned to give your power away. So the pain, trauma means, the way I define trauma is anytime you went out of your body in an uncomfortable situation in order to survive it. That could be an overbearing parent, the child has asthma. That could be your first sexual experience. It wasn't very fun. Your first experience in the gynecologist's office, your first experience with your father, a man that's supposed to love and protect you, and abuses you. That could be a car accident. That could be grief, loss of a parent, whatever it is. Emotions are just energy and movement. That's what emotions means. Okay? Energy and movement. Once I validate an emotion, then it moves. If I keep running away from the emotion, then all I'm doing is creating more pain. And so you have to have compassion for yourself. And part of being a woman is owning your emotions. It's not easy. It's easier for us because we have more synapses in the brain and we have more emotional intelligence. But if you give that part of yourself away, it's okay to cry. It's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to take care of yourself and take that space. If you don't do that for yourself, then that's why you're suffering. And that's why the pain continually keeps growing and expanding. And we get so caught up and overwhelmed by it. And I can say this all the time to women. I'm like, the ego wants to make your pain seem 10,000 times worse than it is. However, if I allow myself to stop and listen and feel to that emotion and feel it, just feel and cry and feel vulnerable and don't get your head into it. Like, why am I feeling this way? The
Judge it.
itty just let it flow. Just let it flow and go. The stronger you teach yourself to do that, because it's a muscle, it's an emotional muscle. I used to time myself and I used to go, Sierra, you got 15 minutes, cry. 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 You're allowed to cry for 15 minutes. Like I talk to my ego. I mean, like, okay, that really hurt. Now give yourself permission to stop and cry. Now I'm going to give you 15 minutes to do that. Because if you go past 15 minutes and you sit in it for hours and days, now you're going into depression. Okay. So I'm going to train myself, and it may sound cruel or mean or whatever it is, but I'm training my ego, my higher self. That's what I'm doing. I'm not allowing my ego to go deep into the hole of depression, into the victimization. I'm feeling this one emotion. I'm going to let it percolate and I'm going to let it come out. Good. Okay. I feel so much better. Now, some of us don't know how to feel. So literally put on a movie that's going to make you cry. That's what I used to have to do. I was so desensitized. I was so desensitized to suck it up all the time. You know how you watch a movie or a commercial, you're like, oh,
Can't cry. I remember saying at times, I don't remember the last time I cried. And it was like, that's not such a good thing.
no, last night I did a full moon ceremony and I cried and I cried and I cried because I knew I was so proud of myself, like tears of joy for doing the work and I'm back here. But then I was crying because of what I've lost, giving up, Spirit's always testing you. You have to give up what you love the most or what you think is love. So I lost my job. You know, I lost my 4Body Fit Institute, my whole savings, my whole everything. I'm like, wow, what is this showing me? I lost a marriage. My husband got prostate cancer a year and after my marriage. I'm like, are you kidding me?
Oh my
Like,
gosh.
how many sledgehammers do I have to get over the head, right? And I'm like, I've done so much work. And I just cried to relieve the pressure. But this is what taught me. I'm strong enough, and this is the muscle it taught me. I always go back to the seed of where I was when I first started anything. So when I first met my husband, I was 50 years old, the fear of being 50, single. But I also was of service for all these years. And I'm like, all these women go home to their husbands and their partners. And I go home to a cat and a dog. I want love now in my life. And same spot, my career was changing because I didn't want to do what I was doing any longer. It was hurting my body at 50, being on the front line. You know how much rape and abuse and things that I deal with. And I'm like, I don't advertise that. I advertise Boot Camp for Goddesses, women's empowerment. Behind that is always abuse.
Yes. Yeah.
The abuse is rising. And a lot of the women don't even believe it. They don't believe that. I'm like, these are the statistics, and the statistics lie, because in all of my measurements of the 4Body Fit method, every time women gathered, 60% of them were a statistic of sexual assault and abuse. That's not including eating disorders, drugs, alcoholic, workaholic. That's not including any of that. That's just including, okay, so each woman is suffering, and how are we picking our drug? We go into bad relationships. We become a workaholic, which is the imitation man. I'm going to, just prove my worthiness by this. I'm going to be a shopaholic, a beautyaholic, however you've learned how to survive, to think what feminine means, and how you manipulate that femininity to get what you want on it is your drug. Xanax, wine.
It's also your God.
And so that's where we have to own where we give our power away. And that's what I noticed with my measurements of where, wow, these women are smart, they're beautiful, they're educated. These are all women from Kripalu and Omega, mind you. It's not cheap to go there. And all the workshops that I've done over the years and measure them. Now, these are conscious women. Yep. Imagine women are unconscious. Like I worked with women in Harlem, young girls from sex trafficking to the worst horrific circumstances, even in Harvard. And all these young women who are so smart, so beautiful, so educated. Yeah. The only way they know how to survive is to cut off their femininity. And I'm like, these are our future leaders. And this is the way they treat themselves. And this is what they're doing. This is pretty scary. This is very scary.